Ever wanted your very own auction coach? In this episode, we'll take you through an actual coaching call where we answer questions like, how do you work out your maximum bid when the agent doesn't give you a price guide? How to work out how much to bid and when, and what to do when you can't physically be at the auction.
Welcome to Your First Home Buyer Guide, the podcast for first home buyers who want to move it along and become homeowners. But most importantly, it is for you to become an educated home buyer.
I'm Megan and that was Veronica. We're both buyer's agents and probably old enough to be your mum. But it's a good thing because between us we've got over 45 years experience to share with you and bucket loads of stories about avoidable mistakes. Together, we're going to make sure you get unbiased and real information you can rely on. Allow us to guide you on your home buying journey. We want you to become an educated home buyer so that you can stop looking for your first home and actually become a proud homeowner.
We've got loads of great tips for you in this episode, and if you'd like more useful tools, head over to the website homebuyeracademy.com.au, and there you'll get access to our free mini course, How to Price a Property Like a Professional. You will also find the holy grail of home buying education, Your First Home Buyer Guide, the online course for people who want to become educated home buyers. We created this for you to help you get on the right path to home ownership for your first home and beyond.
But before we get into the interesting stuff in this week's episode, we've got the boring bit, the disclaimer. You of course know that nothing in this podcast is to be taken as personal advice. We always recommend getting the advice of an expert in their field who takes the time to understand your personal situation. We've done our very best to ensure that the content is correct at the time of recording. Things change rapidly, so always check with the relevant government authority and your trusted advisors to get the most up-to-date information.
Here's a bit of a backstory. Lindsay and Nat have been looking for a family home in northern New South Wales, and the house that they've decided to go for was being offered for sale by auction. We worked through their pricing research one Wednesday in Campfire and talked about a few strange things that they had to navigate before getting ready to bid at auctions. One of these was that the Queensland-based agent refused to give a price guide, and, well, that's the legislation in Queensland. And the auction was being done remotely, with bids being submitted via phone only, so they couldn't physically appear. Felt a bit like COVID again, didn't it, Veronica?
Now, if you've ever wondered how to best prepare yourself for auction, keep listening as I take Lindsay through the paces, her paces. Lindsay, you and Nate are going to auction, and the auction is online, although...
Yes.
Interesting to know if you have the opportunity to go in person. Have you found out if you do?
No, and we did talk about that after last week, and we thought maybe if we were as skilled as you guys, we would have the confidence to do that. But given it's our first time, I think it might be better that we do it this way. I don't know.
What?
No,
I think you get more information when you're there.
Okay.
And because all information is good, particularly at auction, otherwise you're sort of in the dark a bit. So I wouldn't necessarily say that, it's safer not being there. I know the auctioneer, in fact, he used to be Sydney-based. So
yes,
he knows New South Wales legislation, which is a good thing because obviously you're near the border of Queensland, and like anybody who's in a border area where the selling agent is based in the other state, that can get tricky. So you want to make sure that the right legislation is being followed and the right rules. So the property is in New South Wales. So, of course, it's got to follow New South Wales rules.
So we don't have to double check that with them, do we?
It's a good idea to ask. Why not? I think letting them know that you are aware that the rules are different in different jurisdictions, I don't think that's a bad thing. That might put them on notice that you know, numpty, you're actually because there's lots of differences in auctions, right? And one difference, well, obviously quite a substantial difference is in Queensland, they're not allowed to give a price guide, whereas in New South Wales they are. And so your agent has been operating as if they're in Queensland, right? They're not giving you any price indication.
Yeah, which is, frustrating.
Yeah. So how are you going about that? How are you going about working out what your limit is going to be? Because that's really, before you go to auction, is getting your walkaway price really
Yeah.
clear in your head.
Yeah. So we've pretty much followed your book, basically having the three prices. So the price that we think that's a steal, the price that we think is, pretty much market value, and then the price we're prepared to pay because of the premium we want to put on it because the property's right for us. So we think based on the comparative sales that it's, between 1.3 and 1.35. And then we've kind of come to our premium that we want to put on it is about 1.4.
Okay.
And we thought, well, we can't stop at 1.4, so 1.407 but yeah, we're interested to hear how you recommend the rises and, the increments and where you stop.
Boom.
And the strategy behind that.
You've been textbook, you've been following, the steps in the book and obviously the steps in the program. You've been doing that really well. So top marks for that. All right. So when you're in the auction, one of the things that is common to both New South Wales and and Queensland is that you have to register to bid in both jurisdictions. This is one of the reasons why being there is really good. Now, if everybody's online, it sort of doesn't matter. But if you are in rooms or in an auction room and most people are turning up, then that's great because you can actually look around and go, well, how many people are actually in a position to bid? Because if they don't register, they can't bid. Now, they can pre-register. The agents love to get them to pre-register, but the agent in New South Wales cannot hand them their bidder's number until the auction.
Right.
So that's why I always get there a bit early and look around and watch because, even if they're pre-registered, they're still going to rock up and get their number.
Yeah.
Let's look at, okay, so you start counting. I start counting and who's in the room, blah, blah, blah. And so when I'm positioning myself to bid, a lot of people will just stand there and all they want to do is make sure they can see the auctioneer. I want to see those other people that registered to bid. That's the real benefit of being there. Now, if you can't do that, if it's online and everybody's online like it used to be through COVID, then you don't have that ability, right? Some online, some of them use Zoom, a bit like this. You can actually see people's faces. I found that fascinating, right? Others, it was completely like you're typing your offers in and yes, the auctioneer is live and you can hear it and you can see the auctioneer, they've got the camera on them, but they're just reading off the screen as in so-and-so's coming in, so-and-so's coming in and so on. Or a bidder number one's come in, bid number seven's come in, it's numbers and there's no people attached to those numbers. You have to assume that they are following the law,
Yes.
And in this particular case, I think you said that they are going to be bidding, as in each bidder is given an agent and the agent has them on the phone and they bid on the phone. So presuming they've got a live stream.
Yeah. So I imagine, whereas each bidder is assigned the agent and they apparently match the agent to the personality type of the buyer. And then, yes, we're on the phone. And so they've said there'll be a delay. Obviously, there must be a delay in the fact we're saying the bid over the phone and then someone's typing it in to the screen for everyone else to see. So, when you talk about doing it quickly, like getting in there quickly with the next bid, I don't know how delayed that will be. Then the delay from when someone's there just typing in all the numbers for it to then display to all the other bidders.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then the reserve, it's a big green, writing when the reserve's been met, property's on the market. The YouTubes we've watched, he doesn't actually say the property's on the market, but you'll be able to see from the change of the colour of, the bid. And that's really all we've been able to figure out just from watching. He doesn't routinely say bidder number one, bidder number two. So this was another question for you. How are we going to be able to know, unless we're there, how many bidders are there if he doesn't call the number bidder one, bidder two, bidder three? So if we don't know, then what is our best strategy to go on knowing that we're going to be blind to who else is bidding. And
so infuriating, because like one of the best the advantages of auction for buyers is that transparency, and you're sort of missing out on that, right? When I find that I don't have enough information, or when I've got a question mark, right, I will hang back. Because what you don't want to do is inadvertently encourage somebody else, you know? So you sort of want to hang back a bit. You want to get the lie of the land. You want to sort of, rather than go in hobnob boots, boots and all, you want to sort of hang back a little bit and think, okay, well, how hot is this going to be? Now, don't fall into the mistake of thinking that if it starts slow, it's going to stay slow. Because sometimes it can start slow and then just get ramp right up. But at the same time, if you're going hard or you're going super confidently, and say one other buyer does take you on, you really haven't given anyone else a chance. You haven't sort of sat back and went, well, who's here in the room? You know what I mean? If you're going really hard early, or if you're going strong early and you really don't know how many other people are really interested in the property, you're always going to be in the dark. Even if you get to the point where it slows down and you're the one negotiating or whatever, because you were the first in, you might really be the only strong bidder, I like to hang back in those circumstances because you don't know. Now, if I rock up at an auction though, and I see 10 people register, well, I'm going to be a lot more confident to go in hard, because I think there's 9 other people, that are ready and able to bid. 10's a lot of people to register an auction, right? That's anything more than that's a pretty hot auction. So I can be more confident to go in hard. But when I don't know, so say I was bidding in Victoria, for example, where you don't have to register, I'd hang back a little bit, because I'd be going, I want people to show their hand here. I want to know, right? And you're a bit the same. So you're wanting to hang back a little bit rather than going hard, because you're thinking, I just want to make sure that I'm not the only one here. And if I am the only one here, it's not going to stop me bidding, but I will know that I'm the only one. And the agent will know that I'm the only one as well, and I'll know that I know that I'm the only one. It gives you power or strength in your negotiations to say, well, with all due respect, you can be pushing me and telling me there's other buyers and whatever, but it doesn't matter, because I'm the only one here that's actually putting in an offer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
I feel like, again, the agent might have been bluffing, but it sounds like there is a lot of interest, and there's investor interest and things like that. So,
and that's one thing I love about auction, is that, that agent can have all of that dialogue till the heart's content, but if on auction day, if they don't turn up all that interest, with the rabbit ears around it, it's like, so what? Who cares?
Yeah.
They're not here. They don't have a pulse. They're not dying to buy property, So, but if they all turn up and they're like climbing over each other trying to make bids, then you go, okay, well, that's it. He was telling the truth, right?
Yeah.
So if they're jumping in and, and they're clambering all over each other trying to make bids, that's when you might go in a bit hard. You might go in with a bold bid to try to knock them all out, just stun them.
Yeah.
Stun them. You want them to go, oh, whoa,
So when you say hang back, and then when would you say to come in? So you've just said if they're all scrambling, but then come in with a bigger bid. But what if there's no scrambling? It's just kind of started, normally, and we kind of feel like we can figure out how many bidders there are at that point. But there might also be people hanging back like we are.
And there will be. Yeah. There will be. So get a sense of how enthusiastic people are.
Yeah. When do we time that first bid? And
I don't mind being the first bidder, but I will wait. If I don't know really how many people are there, or if there's only 3 people registered, for example, and I'm like, how hot are you? I'll wait. I'll drag it out a bit before I make that bid, and I won't make a huge bid. So he hasn't been quoting. The last one in the street was what sold for 1.2, was it? Was it the last one in the street?
Yeah, but that was December last year, and it was an auction.
Yeah, that's cool. But that doesn't matter. So I probably put that in as my opening bid. because it's
Okay.
not going to buy it. I know it's not
Yeah.
going to buy it. It's not a stupid offer. It's not insulting anybody.
Yeah.
So it's, if there's no other interest, they'll have to negotiate off that point, and so you don't want to go pay too much. You know what I mean? If you can get the 1.3, that'd be better. So I would look at, and I go, and so that's what I probably open it at. If there's nobody else that's bidding, and you wait, look around, it becomes awkward. The agent might execute a vendor bid, because sometimes they will do that to get started. One of the other things that they do to get started, they'll say, come on, or they might even say the last property sold for 1.2 in December. Now, this is obviously going to be worth more than that, but how about we open up the bidding at that? Do I borrow here? It's right away 1.2. That's the sort of thing that they would do, right?
Yeah.
And you wait and see, does somebody else take the bait, right?
Yeah.
If they start with a vendor bid and say it's really high, say they're 1.3, and you go, wow, that's interesting. They haven't given anybody any price guides, and they come out of the gates, because a vendor bid is not the reserve.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And they've only got one in New South Wales, so they're using it for the first year.
Yeah, they only get one. And they use that usually just to put a figure on the table that they're hoping somebody will bid over. But they've got no idea really where you guys are at the price, because they haven't quoted you anything.
Yeah.
So if that vendor bid's really high, you can actually say to the agent, I'm not, that's higher than I want to talk. So you don't even have to say that I want to pay. You can say, that's higher than I want to talk.
Yeah.
Well, that's a bit high. Oh, well, that's a bit high. Like, you haven't been quoting anything. Wow, it's the first guide I've had from you. Well, that feels a bit high. You can sort of react like that if nobody else is doing anything. And you're not saying, I won't pay it, or that's too much, or anything. They go, it's a bit high. And then you're like, oh, God, I'm prepared to negotiate with you, but I'm not at that level, because I'll try and get you to make an offer over that. Yeah. Yeah. And you can put $1,000 on it. If they came in at 1.4, for instance, you just go, no.
Yeah, because that's if it starts there and that's our maximum bid almost, then we kind of assume we're out of it.
You've also got to remember that is your maximum under competition.
Yes.
If that agent comes to you and says 1.4, you go, that's if I'm made to pay that by other buyers, not I'm made to pay that because the vendor's greedy. Two different things.
Yeah.
So you can just go, oh, that's a bit much. That's too much. I'm not in it. If they then drop it, another buyer. Look, I've only been at a handful of auctions where the auctioneer has actually retracted the vendor bid. Literally 2, I think, in my whole time, right? So it happened. Yeah. And it's one of them happened because, in fact, both of them, because I said, no, we're not paying that. And so they went, but you will make, yes, I will bid, but I will not bid over that level. So if you want to retract the vendor bid and we actually start bidding at a reasonable level and get this property sold, then knock yourself out. But I'm not bidding over that. I'll negotiate with you, but I'm not bidding over that. You can go and tell your owner, we're not paying more than that. So it doesn't matter whether you pass it in or whether we negotiate under the hammer or not paying it. And then they've gone away and went, oh, shit, we've sort of overshot the mark. And they've retracted the bid and then we negotiated. But was quite clear we were the only people. And like one of those, it was in rooms. It was in rooms where there's, like, even though we were there, we didn't know how many people registered to that property because they had one desk and everyone's registering for about 10 different properties and you don't know which one's right.
Yeah, because there is 2 houses, I think, in the schedule for the night where we're first, I think, and then there's another property. But yeah, obviously it was an all online registration, so you can't see that either. Okay, so if it's hot though, so we've talked about mostly if it's slow and So what's our strategy if it is hot?
Okay, so if it's hot, you want to be in the bidding, but you don't want it to look like you're chasing the bids. Like, and I guess when it's online, you're not going to have it either. You've got your little agent there that's taking your bits, right? other bidders, generally, if every agent is there with a telephone to their head, to their head, the bids won't necessarily come thick and fast because the agent's trying to talk the person into making a bid. You know what I mean? There's this sort of delay in the system, like you said before. And so I guess you want to sort of be thinking, this is actually it is quite challenging because you really don't know, do you? Is the camera on the other buyer? Like, you've watched the YouTube, and I think that's brilliant. You've done that. Do they ever put the camera on the agent holding the phone, giving the bid? So you don't you literally only see the auctioneer. So you could ask your agent, which bidder is that?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yep. That's a good question.
Yep. How many?
We're allowed to ask. That was one thing I wanted to know, if it was okay to ask the agent, how many bidders have you had?
Look,
so we're allowed that.
You can ask.
That are just true.
I wouldn't necessarily put 100% confidence in the answer, but you can absolutely ask. And you can say, is that a new bidder, or is that so are there 2 bidders or 3 bidders? How many people are bidding at the moment?
Okay, yeah. So, and they can't lie, can they? They have to tell the truth.
I hope that, well, they're not meant to lie. But
I've heard terrible things about Ray White. I don't know. And I don't know anything about property, but everything I have heard, everyone's like, oh, Ray White.
Well, it's interesting how a brand can get a reputation when it's actually a franchise. So that means every individual office is a different business. You know, they franchise and they purchase effectively the branding, but it's interesting to have a reputation. I think there are oftentimes a lot of Ray White agents, even outside of Queensland, do tend to resist giving price guides, and it does annoy buyers. There's no doubt about it. So I can understand how buyers might have a negative impact or a negative view of the brand if they've encountered those types of agents.
Yeah. So we can ask, we can say, which bidder is that, and how many bidders are there now? And then, can you explain the rises and like when you start dropping from, say, for a $1.3 million property, would a 50 grand rise to start with, then going down to 20 and 10 be what you see, or is that lower bit? Right, price point is a bit lower.
It all comes down. Okay, so for starters, it all comes down to how far away from a reserve are the bids. If someone opens a bidding at 1 million and the reserve is, say, it's 1.4, then it's quite feasible the auctioneer will ask for $50,000 bids.
Okay, yeah.
They go, I've got quite a fair way to go, right?
Yes, yeah.
And particularly if there's only got a handful of registered bidders. If they've got lots of registered bidders and the opening bid is not too far away from the reserve, then they'll probably ask for a 10 or a 20, Okay. So there's a clue in what the auctioneer asks for, the increment that the auctioneer asks for. That's a clue in terms of how far away you've got to go. Now, this is not a hard and fast rule because some auctioneers, sometimes they give these clues and we'll be going, whoa, that reserve's high. And then the next minute we discover it's on the market. You go, that guy's idiot. Like, you know what I mean? That's smart. Gavin has been around a long time and I wouldn't expect him to do that, right? But some, so I'll give you general sort of practices, but this is not a hard and fast rule. So typically they'll ask for a higher increment the further away it is from the reserve. And remember, the reserve doesn't have to be what it's worth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so then if they're asking for a $10,000 bid, you go, oh, that's really interesting. Either they've got lots of bidders on this, or we're not that far away from a reserve.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So I get clever when I bid, but I'm not suggesting you do this, right? Yeah. Because you have to be very newer. My team was at an auction the other day where a buyer's agent tried to do what I do. Obviously not a very experienced buyer's agent or not a very new buyer's agent, or both.
Yeah.
Buyer's agent tried to do what I do, which is I vary the increments and I bid in odd numbers.
Yep.
And I'm quite acrobatic with that, and I'm known for it, right? So sometimes the auctioneers love it. They think it's fun. Other times they bloody hate it, but whatever. And I've had auctioneers refuse my odd bid and take a 5 or a 10. In fact, one of them took $1,000 less than my bid and ended up buying it for $1,000 less than I'd bid. Like, you go, oh my God.
Oh, wow.
Anyway,
is that because they struggle counting?
Yeah, I think
They
so.
don't
Auctioneers clearly in the wrong game. But the point being that, my team saw this buyer's agent lose count, ends up having an argument with the auctioneer. The auctioneer's going, no, you're $100,000 out. So she'd actually got over her client's limit because she was trying to play silly buggers, right? So that's why I say, don't try to get clever with your bids. You do this day in, day out for a living. You can do it. Don't try it if you don't, right? So the increments usually start bigger and they do get smaller. When you get to the real pointy end, and usually when it's down to 2 bidders, and if they start locking horns and they're going up in thousands, that's danger territory. That's where the auctioneer is very happy to let you guys just fight it out. They're in there just getting the rhythm going, getting you 1,000. Come on, sir. You really going to let it go for 1 more 1,000? Seriously? You got to go back out there looking at properties next weekend. What's your wife going to say to you? All that stuff, right? All that pressure. Come on. $1,000, sir. Madam, are you really? Come on. 1 more. I think you've got them. 1 more 1,000 and you might have the keys. All that sort of stuff. They're just giving you this sort of dangling little carrot thinking it's only 1,000. It's not $1.275 million. It's only 1,000.
Yeah. And then time goes by and you bidded 15,000 in $1,000 bids.
I've been at auctions where they've gone over $150,000 in $1,000 bids.
Wow.
Right?
Oh my goodness.
And I thought to myself at the beginning of that pattern, right? At the beginning, I thought, you know what, $10,000 would probably put an end to this.
Yes. Yeah.
So at that point, it doesn't hurt to come in with a stronger bid. And it might only be 5, it might be 7, it might be 10. But the point being, at that point, you want to just put a stamp of authority on it. If you think you're locking horns with somebody and this could just go on and it's excruciating, don't let it get to that point. And it's well within your budget and your limit, right? So if you've got runaway, here's what you do. Then you've got to, that's when you exercise a higher bid, then it's out of sync, right? So before you've got a big bid, gradually going down to small bids, that's the danger point, right? So you want to sort of get in there at that point, and that's when you sort of make that strategic, I just want to put an end to this. Now, it doesn't always work, but often works.
Yeah, because if other people aren't near their max, then they'll just follow with another 10. Or they might go back to ones and then you do it again?
Well, potentially. But also the thing too is that you can, and then so you won't see when other people are at their max. I see people when they've gone to their max and then got over their max and they continue even though they've shown that they're actually over their limit. Right? So that's what you will never know because those bidders are on the end of the phone and you don't have all that body language, which is normally what I look for in an auction, right? So you're using that as a sign. So if you find, you've done a 1, they've done a 1, you've done a 1, they've done a 1, you go, okay, well, this could go on forever. I'm going to hit it with 7.
Yeah.
See if that disrupts. If they've got more in the tank, they'll come back with another 1 and Eddie can do it again, And it might be that they've just got more money than you, but it also might be that that's exactly what you needed to do just to make them think that you're going to keep going.
Yeah. Okay.
So
that's the strategy. You're trying to make other buyers think we're not done yet. We're going to keep going. So don't bother.
Yep, that's exactly right. You're trying to scare somebody into giving up.
Yeah, okay. And what if it's doing that 111 and it's quite close to our maximum? So we don't have the 5s and the 10s left either.
Yep. Well, this is
what
where
do we do then?
Stick to your limit, right? And this is the other thing. When I talked about odd number, so your limit's going to be an odd number. If you're only in 5s and 10s, it's getting really obvious something weird's happened the minute you do a 7 or a 2.
Weird in what way? Because if we don't start doing the odds from the start, are you saying we should start doing odds towards the end? Or
well, you can show an odd in every now and then.
Okay.
Like 7. So generally, if I'm, and so that's what I mean is that you don't want because when you're at the pointy end, right, and say you've been bidding in 5s, and all of a sudden you've got 2 or 7, right? Say your limit's 1.407.
Yeah.
Say you've been bidding 5s, right? And then the other person is at 1.4, right?
Yeah.
You go, if I continue bidding in 5s, I'm either going to bid 5 or I'm going to go over my limit.
Yeah.
And then I have to bid a 7. But what people will go, oh, okay, I'll do a 1 because I get close to my limit. You know, I would probably say bid 7. Just go to your limit.
Yeah, because then people know that you're close to your limit if you go back to a 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it safe to say that you should never be the first to do the 1s because that gives away that you're close to your limit?
Not always, because sometimes I'll do a 1. I'll throw a 1 in to see what happens, to see if they drop to 1, and then I'll go to a 5 or a 10. And then,
yeah.
So I gave them that little, and this is what I mean. If you're very new at it and you're very quick on your feet with numbers, you can do this, right? And I'll go, yeah, 1, because I feel I want to see if how much fuel they got in the tank. I might be testing. And then if they come back to the, say, 5 or a 10, I might go 10. And then they will, fuck, sorry, I should have recording this one. Bugger, I thought they were at 1s and and I thought that meant that they had nothing left, but she came back strong with a 10. Well, so what I've done there is psychologically thrown them. They don't know. They don't know what to do. And I want them to think it's fucking crazy.
Yeah. To be unpredictable is the aim.
Yeah. So, but I get that this is a challenge. This is your first auction, and it's also a really weird one because you're on the end of the phone with an agent. So I'm not going to say start playing games here. I'm just trying to give you some ideas as to what happens at that pointy end and how to avoid getting caught in a trap that you don't realize you're getting caught into until you're in it, right?
So
that and so for that reason, if the bidding slows down, so say gets to 1s, that's when you might use a 7.
Yeah.
And then because then when you do your final 1,407, if that's your final bid, and then you think,
that's open to discussion with you whether the 7 is enough of a, like we thought, maybe the other people think 1.4 is their max too. So I think, did you or Megan say last week that you have to do 3 above
3 bids? Well, that's how Megan describes it as 3 bids. I'll give you my rationale on this, right?
Okay. Yeah.
If 1.4, after you've done all your price research, after you've looked at what else is sold in the area and how likely something's going to come up again for you that will meet your requirements in the sort of short term, the next month or so, and you think, you know what? We want this and we want it enough to push ourselves for it, right? And then you go through the exercise, well, how much is too much? And that's with that sort of, 1.3, easy, 1.35, or rather not, but, if I have to, no problems, 1.4, oh, that's starting to hurt.
Yeah.
And then I go to you and I say, well, what if you wake up the next morning and somebody paid 1.41? That's 1,410,000. And if you wake up the next morning and you go, I will wish I'd paid it because it's more than I really want to pay, but at the end of the day, it's still within the realms of reality to me, then your limit at 1.407 is too low, right? So if 1.41, you will go, you know what, push come to shove, I'll pay it. You go, okay. So then I go, okay, what if they pay 1.45? And you're like, they can have it. No way I'm paying that.
No.
Nah. They're good.
Yeah.
And that's too high. What about 1.425? Where does that sit? And you go, I feel really uncomfortable, really, really, really uncomfortable about that as a limit. Like you're sort of agonizing because you think, you know what, no. You know this. The two of you know this limit, whatever that number is, right?
Yeah.
It's the uncomfortable, but I'd rather pay it than lose it.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? 1.45 might be the, no, not in a million years.
That's my
easy, The 1.
I'm happy for that.
Yeah, the 1.425 might have that same answer, but 1.42 might not, for argument's sake. So it's It's really about after you've done your research. You don't do this before you've done your research. And I know you guys have done your research. After you've done your research, that's when this questioning is super important, right? You know what I mean? Like then you've really got to go, how far am I pushing myself to the point of I want to be sick? Probably too far. But to the point of discomfort, but actually I would rather buy it than miss out on it for that price.
Yep.
Your limit has to be around there. And that's when you add your odd number onto it, those extra couple of bids. Because it's those extra couple of bids that if you get into an auction scenario and, you know, the other buyer lands on your bid, for example, or your actual maximum, say you bid your maximum, right? And then the other buyer comes $500 bid.
Yeah.
You are going to wanna try one more to see. And that's where that comes into it. So that's what we always say, add a few extra thousand onto yours. I feel sick at that point, but I would rather pay it than miss it. You know, you add a couple of thousand more to that, a few thousand more to that, then you've taken out that equation in your head. If that does go over that, you go, I've already had that exercise in my brain when I wasn't under stress, when I'm not at the middle of the auction, when I'm not going to regret it.
Yeah.
I've already thought that through and I'm going to let it go now.
Yeah. But still, just when you said that $500 bid, I thought, okay, so if ours was 1407 and then it was going up in ones and then we did the 1407 bid and then someone else did 500. So it was the first time it got down to 500s. That would kill me. I'd be like, oh, we're close to their, like we're clearly close to their maximum. So if we just had a couple more $1,000 in us of $500 bids, we probably would have won it.
But that's how you get.
I guess you never know.
No, that's how you get sucked in. That's why I say you add. That's your 7,000 you've already added over your walkaway price. That's those extra bids. They've already been spent. So you have to sort of you reframe that in your mind and go, I already spent those extra bids. I already tested the theory. I've tested that theory because otherwise you keep going. And that's where you're paying too much for the property and regretting it, right?
Yeah.
So that's where you go, I've already tested that theory. I've already had $7,000 extra that we put in there that to see whether or not that's fair. You know what I mean? And I realize now that I've pushed them another $7,000 over what I really want to pay and my question is answered.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you sort of have to give yourself that self-talk.
Yeah.
And that's the reason we always say add that bit extra. But that also, if you sort of at that point, if you're going, well, I actually would pay 1.5, then 1.07, and listen, be careful over $1 million too, because those O's, those zeros need to go on the right. So you say, okay, I clearly haven't set my limit high enough if I feel that I would want to pay that. In the auction, you're going to be under a lot more pressure and you are going to want to bend.
I know.
You will regret it if you bend after you've been through this exercise. So this is why I say you push yourself beforehand when you are not.
This is why that's big, because I would bend, but he won't. So, I think
and that's equally important then, because, you know, if you know that he's not going to bend, you need to know you've really pushed your maximum before you go to auction, because you don't want him digging his heels in the sand. If it really is, he will regret it the next day, you know?
Yeah. The thing I just keep coming back to is going, we know we've done our research and we know we've got, you know, the price we think it's worth. However, you're not going to know until until auction day what the market decides is the price.
Well,
and so you could have done all the research in the world, but because we don't have a good feeling of what the market is doing right now and literally on that day what the market is doing, that's the unknown I struggle with, because how we might have underpriced it and put our maximum bid under what clearly the market thinks it is, and then we've missed out just because we didn't know what the market is doing right now.
The thing is, the market will do what the market does. You've done your price research, which is really based on what that property is worth. Okay? So if you think that property goes up and down, up and down, up and down, depending on how many people turn up in the day, the property market can be volatile, but it's not that volatile, right? There is luck involved. There's luck involved for both buyers and sellers, right? There are some days when, the two craziest, hottest buyers rock up and you just watch it go crazy. And there are those results that I see sit in the marketplace and you do your research and go, they still stick out. They still stack out as anomalies, right? So some people will say, well, that's the market. Well, it's not. It's just that happened to be the circumstances on that particular day. And that's why you really do have to be really clear on your strategy, because this property is a property that sits in an entire marketplace and it has to sit in context, If you're overpaying, then the process you're going through is the best possible process to go through. It will protect you from overpaying. Now, if someone else gets the property, it hurts. It does hurt because if you lose something you want. But if they pay way overs for it, it's best to be able to let that go. And they didn't go through the exercise that you're going through, true. But you're not going to find that every time you go to buy a property. And also you won't find that every time you sell a property. Assume it's going to happen every time. Like I see people sell for less than they paid because they were the crazy buyer and they failed. They couldn't find a crazy seller, as a crazy buyer when they were a seller. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So even though you're absolutely right, you're disadvantaged at times because sometimes you just don't know who's out there and what they're prepared to do, but you have done your research and it does put that property in the context of what else is around, and what's likely to come on the market at another time. That is your best insurance policy against really stuffing up, right? Yeah. It's also your best insurance policy to put you in the box seat, to have a realistic expectation of what you're prepared to pay and give you the best possible chance of owning that property.
Yeah, I like that idea that if it does go for way over, it's more an anomaly. That it is us misjudging the market.
Yes, because the thing is that you have done a lot of research, and I know you have. Last week we went through the whole pricing process with you. I know you've gone and sort of done a bit of extra pricing research in following that, and when you followed our guidance, right? And I'm gathering that gave you a lot more clarity in terms of really where this property sits. Would that be fair?
Yeah, we went, I think last week we were in the 1.2 to 1.25 or 125 to 1.3, but now we've gone up 50 grand as to what we think it's worth based on doing that whole comparable analysis again. So we think we undervalued it last time just because we weren't doing the process right. And now we've come to 1.3 to 1.35.
Yeah. So
and then because we want it, we put a premium on it.
Yeah.
And we're prepared to pay 1.4.
Yeah, and that is a really smart, sensible process to go through when you're working out what to pay. Every now and then, as I said, there's luck involved, bad luck, good luck, depending on which side of the equation you're on. And if that luck falls your way, fantastic. You might get it for under 1.3, right? If the luck falls towards the vendor, then you might miss out because some other goose comes along and pays 1.5. You just don't know how these things are going to pan out in the day, but you've done the best possible preparation to give you the best possible the opportunity for the right outcome for you, and that is to whatever you pay, you know that you couldn't get it for any less.
Yeah.
And so that is an important comfort, when you actually do get the keys, because you probably have post-purchase dissonance. That's very normal. Afterwards to go, oh, what have I done?
Yeah.
Immediately afterwards you go, oh, I felt the time I bought a property, right? You get the first elation, and the second one is, I paid too much.
Oh no, yeah.
You go back to look at your research and you go, no, I didn't. Yeah. And you just have to think, and you just have to go, I have done my research. I'm better equipped than probably anyone else in the room. Even half the buyer's agents don't do the amount of research you've done, which is ridiculous, but happens. I'm equipped to make a really good decision, a very solid decision, and to live or die by that decision.
Yeah. It is just frustrating on that point, because if everyone did their research, then property would be sold at what it's worth rather than someone coming in with just having not done their research and go, oh yeah, I'll pay 1.5. I've got 1.5, so why don't I just pay it? Then that puts the price when we miss out. That's the comparable. The next property that, you know, we go to look at that's a similar condition in a similar street. Now that the benchmark's 1.5, but that was wrong. But someone paid it because they could.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, that's
rather than paying it based on, you know, the research that they should have done. They just paid it because they had the money.
It's true, but not everyone has the money. And also the thing is that, you know, like then often people who have the money are looking in different price bracket, different types of property.
True. Yeah.
So it's a theory, but it doesn't always happen that way. It can, and I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's less likely. The buyers tend to, even if they don't go through the exercise that you've gone through, sort of instinctively they sort of know where prices sit, right?
Yeah.
It's really the guardrails or the guardrails of how you go to an auction. It's when they look around and they've got FOMO and they get locked in, like they're locked horns with another buyer and they're not actually conscious about what they're doing. What we want to make you do, you're aware that you're conscious of what's going on, and the other buyers that are not as conscious are in the auction or not. You know, and if they're in there, you're aware that they're not necessarily as conscious and as educated as you, but they are typical of most buyers.
Yeah.
The fact that you've got your pricing and you've actually adjusted it up, again, it equips you, and you could say, oh, well, of course, you throw more money in it, of course you got a better chance of buying it. But the thing is that a lot of buyers approach their first few auctions with wishful thinking. They approach those auctions thinking, I want to buy it for that. And so like you said yourself, there's a bit of confirmation bias in your price research. You're going, oh, look, I wouldn't buy that, so it's not worth as much. You go, hang on a minute. Would other buyers pay more? Like, are there things about other buyers would value, and is that why it sold for that price? Or right? So when you take out that bias from your assessment of market value and you're going, okay, really this is where it sits in the context of everything else, you're better positioned not to miss out because of wishful thinking. And what happens with buyers that miss out because of wishful thinking, they miss out on a few and then they throw the kitchen sink at it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So they're the buyers that come saying, I've got 1.5, so I'm just going to chuck it at it because the wishful thinking hasn't worked for them. And then they go, oh, I've just got to basically bid whatever.
Yeah. I've got to just pay more and more and more and more.
Yeah. So the pendulum swings from being fearful about overpaying to just being purely fearful about missing out. And you know, so there's no rationale behind any of that, but we see it happen all the time. So what you're trying to do is subvert that by going, okay, well, listen, I know what it's worth. It's worth more than we initially hoped for, and I know that because we've done our research properly. And so we might catch other buyers napping. They may not be ready, and I'm happy to get for less even because more than they're prepared to pay, but less than I would have paid because I'm more prepared. So it can work that way as well.
Yeah. Okay. And so just back to this maximum bid, the 1407. So that's if 1.4 was our max, but we've allowed for the 7,000. But just in the psychology of the number you stop on, like if it's a 7 or, you know, this 3 bids should get you over what other people might bid.
Okay.
Should it be 7 or 17?
Forget the other people would bid for a minute, right?
Okay.
People typically set their limit at round numbers. Right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons we say just don't set your limit at a round number because it's more likely to be somebody else's limit, right? And we are worried about what other people bid because other people are competing with us, right? And other people set the value, you know, in a sense that wherever the price goes. But at the same time, you've got to set your own course here. So you've got to decide what you're prepared to pay, right?
Yeah.
And then you add a little bit to counteract somebody else might set the same limit, right? So you setting your limit at what you're prepared to pay comes first before we think about other buyers, right?
Yeah.
So if in answer to your question, should it be 1.407 or 1.417? That comes down to whether 1.4 is your walkaway price or 1.41 is your walkaway price.
Yeah.
This is why we add that little bit at the end.
Yeah.
So it really gets
But
around.
the little bit is how many bids?
Look,
Should it be three bids? Or
it's $3,000. You know, it's just an odd number. That's all it is. It's an odd number,
all right.
somewhere between 0 and 10.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I wasn't sure whether, it was in bids, like 3 bids over, or in
Because
dollars.
you can't, I mean, I think last week when we were talking, Megan referred to it as 3 bids. I think she was talking 3,000. It's almost like that's 3 bids. But I just say an odd number. And one is not enough, right?
Yeah.
Mine might be too much. So it's usually somewhere between 2 and 8, right?
Yeah.
That's that.
Okay. Yep. And how often does it go down to $500 bids? Should we be doing 14075? Is that how you say it?
Look, I think honestly, you know, you might see in Sydney, we do not see $500 bids, really. Right? You might see 500s up there. I've actually been, I think it was in Adelaide, I saw $250 bids. I mean, it's like, well, come on.
Yeah. Well, I saw, the reason I ask is because I was watching one of Gavin's YouTubes, and he was like, look, I'll take $500. So yeah, he was asking for 500s, even though no one put it out there.
Yeah. So look, that's just him trying to get somebody to put their hand up, really. I mean, to be honest, I think that you try to look, if someone bids 500s, you know, they might be getting very close to the wire. Maybe you just put 2,000, you know, like you just be a bit more than they're paying to hopefully see them. But, you know, as I said, you don't have the benefit of as much visibility and as much transparency as we like to see at auctions. So you're not going to have that when the agent's on the phone. But you are, and write down the bids. Like, I mean, they're probably on the screen in front of you, I presume.
Yes. Big text, like this was the Zoom. It's, you know, big numbers at the top of the screen.
Yeah, but then they disappear.
Well, it just keeps ticking up. It's like when the new bid comes in, it just goes up. So you don't see necessarily what the previous bid was.
Yes. So I would be writing down the bids.
Okay, yeah. Because, I was thinking what my role is.
Yeah.
Because Nat's got to be bidding and then figuring out what he's going to do. But maybe my job can be
the scribe.
Yeah.
And I do that. I have somebody in my team when I'm bidding. I have somebody in my team be the scribe, especially because I did rubbery with my numbers. So sometimes I need to just check where we're up to. You know, so I would write them down. Everybody's bids. And if you could see
everybody's bids.
Yeah, and then even if you had like bidder 1, bidder 2, bidder 3, and you put a little number next to them as you're going down, that's useful.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
I've just had a thought about the agent that we're on the phone to. So we got this text message to say, you know, thank you for registering, blah, blah, that here's your information. An agent will call you to talk about your strategy before the day. So do we say anything? Do we not say anything? No.
They can call you.
And why would they even do that?
Well, they're coaching you. They want to make sure that they're trying to reduce your barriers, right? They're trying to get you on side. They're trying to help you. This is a massive conflict of interest, but it does happen. There's no law against it as far as I'm aware. So, you know, they're helping you. Of course they are.
We know how nerve-wracking auctions are. We want to make sure that, you know, blah, blah, blah. And so we haven't had the call yet, but I just wondered what we say. So, do we just say, good?
So I would ask them some questions. Go, you know, what would really help us with our strategy is if you could tell us how many people have registered. And if you could tell us where the reserve's likely to be. Do you have an idea where the opening bid will be? Do you have any idea what the vendor bid will be? And just hit them with questions.
And what if they can, what are they likely to say to those questions?
Probably not tell you.
No, we haven't set the reserve yet. We only do that just prior to the auction.
Yeah. That would be great if you could give us that information, because that will be useful in helping us set our strategy.
Yeah.
And then just go the circular argument on them. What's your strategy? Can I help you with strategy? Absolutely, you can help me with my strategy. I'd love it if you give me the answers to these 4 questions.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. I mean, it's like, that's cool. No, I don't know. In that case, then no, I don't think that you can help me with my strategy.
Yeah. Okay. And given that Gavin can't see us, so is there any advantage, disadvantage to that? You know, he's looking at all the agents on the phone. Often he's like, can't hear them because everyone's talking. I'm guessing it's like really confusing for him. So yeah, because a lot of the stuff
he's based in Brisbane, isn't he?
No idea where he's based.
I reckon he's based in Brisbane. I reckon that's another reason why they're doing this. He's not coming down to where it is their office is. Tugun. That's my theory on this. It's a very efficient way for them to do auctions in regional areas.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my theory on that anyway. But look,
he can't see us. So he's not reading our body language in the way he's trying to get more money out of us for the vendor. So what then is his strategy if he has no idea who he's working with?
Yeah, look, it's a very good question. I really don't know the
basically he's not. Yeah, he's not the craft of an auctioneer. Is in that the psychology, right? So he doesn't have visibility.
Agreed. It's quite unusual that they would choose to do that. And this is something that I got a lot of feedback from auctioneers during COVID, when they had to do online auctions. And a lot of the auctioneers did say to me that was really difficult for them to run an auction without that feedback to them, because they do get feedback from buyers. And so, yes, again, he's obviously learnt his performance because it's performative as well. And a lot of them did say that, it felt weird, they're in front of a camera. Now, obviously, they've got all the agents running around with the phones, but it's, that they must have worked out a way that you can sort of compensate on the performative side of things. But you're absolutely right, it's not getting the info that other auctioneers will feed off when they're running the auction. So that could be an advantage, but it's a mess. I really don't like it.
There just has to be some reason why they've continued these online auctions, other than it being a cost-saving exercise. Auctioneers don't have to run around to each property and, they're all in the same room. They can just book him and just do one house after the other.
Look, can I tell you, they will have their reasons. I can surmise as to what I think there might be, but the reality is a bit like, there's 2 major ways of conducting an auction. One is in rooms. So that's where they basically have it inside a venue, away from the property, where you have a lineup of auctions and people rock up, they register at a table and they've got a room full of people for all different properties, right? Now, when I was an auction agent, we only did on site. We would never think of doing in rooms. And normally you don't have a hybrid of the two. You've got an on-site auctioneer and you've got an in-rooms auctioneer, and the agents would choose one way or the other. It's unusual you get one agent that would offer 2 different options, right? So therefore, they've got their reasons, and that's their part of their approach to the market as how they do it. My guess is they've just got their reasons. They've just decided this is the way that they go about doing things. And as a buyer, it's what we teach you guys. You got to learn the agent's process, because they're not all the same. Wow. There are rules. There are laws that they have to abide by. But within those laws, there's a certain amount of freedom and different offer processes, all the rest of it. And any buyer that just assumes it's going to be the same every time gets unstuck, because what worked one time won't work the next, and so forth. And this is a little bit the same. So you've got this slightly weird auction environment. Hopefully this has been a really good coaching session for you to get a really good handle as to what to expect. I am dying to hear your feedback and the story afterwards. Love to hear about that.
Yeah, I'm just skeptical. I'm like, because there could, you talk about dummy bidders in the book, and at an auction you can pick them out because of there's, they're there. But we're not going to know if an agent is just another Ray White agent is just putting other bids in for the vendor. And no one would know.
I 100% agree. As I said, this does not have the transparency that I like to see at auctions. And I, in New South Wales, the auction laws, it was always been illegal to use dummy bidders. But in 2003, when I was back selling back then, the laws changed, and that's when we had to start registering bidders at auction, and that's when the fines went up for dummy bidders, et cetera, et cetera. We saw a lot less dummy bidders at auctions as a result of that legislation. So you can say that was very good, effective legislation. And, here we are 20 years later, still the same legislation. Dummy bidders do exist. I don't see them very often. I really don't. And I know talking to agents, it's not, back then it was almost every agent used them. And now very few use them. And sometimes it's the owner themselves that actually.
Yeah, or their friends.
This is where, and it's a bit like when the agent's negotiating with you and they call you bluff by talking about some other buyer that's miraculously made another offer, right? This is where you go back to your price research. You go back to what that property is worth, right? And anybody using a dummy bidder who goes over what the property is really worth or over the reserve or really over, comparable sales is an absolute idiot, right? They're playing with fire. And so as a buyer, if you've done your research, you have to take confidence in the fact where it sits, right? And if you feel that you're being pushed higher by somebody who's not real, you have to make the decision, am I prepared to call the bluff and run the risk of missing out on the property, or do I just have to suck it up and continue to negotiate because I want this property and it's within the range that I've set for myself? So it's a hard call, and it's horrible if you feel like you're being done over, but that's where your pricing research is so important because that gives you your own set of guidelines to work within.
Yeah. There's nothing that's out of our control anyway, isn't it?
Exactly.
We've got those. Yeah.
I'd say there's a very low risk of dummy bidders, very low, but not impossible, right? Not impossible, but very low. So I wouldn't worry. I wouldn't focus your attention on that. I'd focus on your attention on everything you are focusing your attention on. And I think you're giving yourself the best possible shot of getting it and getting it at the right place.
Yeah. All right, Veronica, how did it all end up?
Well, I would love to be able to say they bought it, but they didn't. They were in the hunt though. And what actually happened was that it was a really competitive auction. There were lots and lots of buyers on this. But interestingly enough, those lots and lots of buyers really were all out of the race by about 1.25 million. And so when it came to the pointy end, there were really only Lindsay and Nat and two other buyers. And one of those buyers only sort of, I think, made one bid even. So they were so close to being at, the buyer, of that property. They had a bit of, it sold for, I think it was
1.431 was the sale price,
which ended up being $14,000 over their maximum, over their total final walkaway price. So, and in that 14,000, there was another bidder came in, and then ultimately the person who took the keys of the property, if you like, the successful bidder, was the person that had been sort of fighting them out at the tail end of that auction. But the interesting thing is by going through that whole pricing exercise that we took them through, they were in the hunt, because if they hadn't priced it properly, they had no chance of getting that property, and they were in there, but somebody else ultimately had more money than they did.
I think there was a lot of, and we've just done a bit of a debrief with them, and something I'm incredibly proud of, and that they should be very proud of themselves about, is that they stopped at their limit. They stress test themselves before they went to the auction, and they stopped at their limit. And congratulations, because that's what you need to do.
Yes, because they pressure tested, as you can hear in this whole conversation with Lindsay, that limit was pressure tested before they went to auction, not in the middle of the auction.
Not in the auction.
And it's, so whilst we are proud of them for being top students and star pupils, I have to say, they will get there, they will get the right property, and they'll be able to put all of this whole experience to good use. And this whole coaching session was, put them in the hunt. And they would never be in the hunt without it, I can tell you that.
Absolutely. Now, a quick note, you might think that we cover everything you need to know in this podcast, but a word of warning, we don't. We just scratch the surface here. If you really want to be an educated first home buyer, you need to learn all of the steps and how to do everything in the right order.
Our First Home Buyer Guide course only costs $990 and you get direct access to us to help guide you through your negotiations. And let me tell you, right, we had 2 sessions with them in Campfire. The first one was pricing and the second one was the recording you just listened to. Now, if you were doing that and you're paying me for my time, or if they were, I should say, they would have paid me $595 for each of those sessions. That's more than the entire course cost, right? So it's an absolute bargain is all I can tell you. Because you can bring the link of any property that you're looking at buying and you can talk to us at Campfire every Wednesday and we will help you work out whether it's an A, B, C grade or a no-go zone. Trust both of us here. You will buy better with our guidance and you'll overpay by a lot more than $1,000 if you don't know what you're doing.
In this episode, we've only touched on a tiny part of the huge amount of things you need to know to become an educated first home buyer. There is so much more for you to do. You can learn all of the steps in the right order and avoid all of the mistakes that others have made in our 10-step online course for first home buyers.
If you'd like to learn more about the right process and avoid making rookie errors, become an educated home buyer. Head over to the website, check out your First Home Buyer Guide, the course that we have created for you. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you won't miss an episode. And if you've liked what you've heard today, please give us an iTunes review. It helps other people find us. And of course, I know it's a bit cringy, but we're going to ask for 5 stars. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you've found this really useful. And if you have, please share the love with others who you know are in the same boat. We'll be back next week with more priceless stuff.